Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Arab Media Intelligence Network webinars. In this one, we are conducting the full webinar in English, but I will try to find a way to have translation in Arabic for me and Paul. So, as we always say, in a word where everyone seems to be trying to find the quick way around, in a world where everyone seems to be forgetting that data and research is the way to move forward, even with AI, or let me say it, especially with the existence of AI, to do double check and to make sure you have the right info, you've communicated the right thing. That's the most important thing right now. We try at the Arab Media Intelligence Network to focus on all talents in the MENA region who are specialized in dealing with social and digital data to take intelligent decisions. So they're dealing with the media data, they're dealing with the marketing data, they're dealing data almost on a daily basis. And their decisions, it doesn't only impact their lives, but it impacts everyone around them. So we have tonight joined by one of the most reputable names in the AI industry. He's the CEO of Sila Insights and Sila Cities, where he leads teams. And he is truly redefining the city that we're living in. With his team, he's trying to leverage the AI in a way that everyone is talking about it, but he's building it through Sila Insights and Sila Cities. He's trying to understand people's behavior to make better cities and audience behavior to make all the communication with the industries and brands coming truly to us as we want, not as they want. So he's trying to understand the behavior in every single aspect. My guest and your guest today is Paul Kelly, who's passionate about pushing the boundaries of the AI and data. Paul, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. And that was a great introduction too, so I appreciate that.
All truth, all of your work, and welcome, Paul. And please, if I'm putting too much pressure on you, you have to know that I'm taking advantage of every single minute we're having together. Okay.
Perfect. No, been looking forward to it for a while.
All right, wonderful. So let me start by the main topic we're discussing always: research and data for intelligent decisions. When you hear the word data and research, what comes first to your mind?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. I think opportunity is probably the one that comes to my mind. But I think what comes to perhaps the industry's mind and everything like that is a challenge. And I guess in every challenge there's an opportunity, right? But I think particularly around consumer research, there's been sort of data's always existed in one way, right? Like from surveys and things like focus groups and all those sorts of things. But as the world has evolved and as we've sort of become more and more social, more and more digital, and companies themselves have been realizing, I guess, as well, that the amount of data that they're sitting on is getting bigger, then that is a big opportunity. But I think the challenge is part of that is that a lot of I guess traditionalists in market research and things like that are sometimes wary about data and what data might mean and how it may be disrupting whole processes. So I think it's two words actually. It's challenge and opportunity.
Actually, I love when you said, like, for you it's an opportunity, but when you mention it for other people, and that's true, when you mention data for other people, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Like, what we're gonna do with this? How we're going to store it? So, like, they're asking the wrong questions.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's that's partly. I think historical, like there's been sort of certain ways of doing things for a long time. And then when they get disrupted, it takes a while to change. And then the other thing is it can be overwhelming, right? And you know this, you've just said it yourself,
Definitely.
you got
I
tons
wouldn't
and
be
tons of.
mistaken. I wouldn't be mistaken if I said data and research is a core value in Sila Cities and Sila Insights.
Yeah, well, that's our reason for being, is to connect data and to get behavioral insights, not just on a day-to-day basis from a consumer, but also spatially. So how people move and how they go across the city and how they interact their daily life. And both of those things inform each other, right? So I mean,
Indeed.
every day of our life, we wake up, we do things, whether that's we have breakfast and all that sort of thing. But when we leave the house, we're either going to a job, we might be going to college, we might be going wherever. Even if we're working from home, we've still got interactions with the world around us. That drives what we buy. That drives the car we drive, the transport we take, the bus, the train. It drives a lot of decisions that happen across the day. And the intelligence behind all of that is sort of somewhere which hasn't really been effectively looked at before. And so what we try and do is, or what we do, not try, is get those insights from those daily interactions with the world around people to understand those patterns and those behaviors. And then we also look at how they impact consumers.
And I guess it also impacts the way your projects, or you take decisions in projects in Sila.
Yes, yeah. Well, data's at the center, obviously, at everything, and we try and leverage our technology as much as we can as well. And all of those things feed into how not just I make decisions, but
what
how
about
the team
gut
makes
feeling,
decisions.
Paul? What about gut feeling? Like someone like you, like we're talking about how many decades? Like 2-3 decades of experience.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say go,
Both of
oh
those.
no, don't trust the data. I know. Why wouldn't go with this path?
Well, I think, you know what? I think gut feeling is still probably a good thing, but we have to remember that bias comes into things. And so our gut feeling is based on our experience, and our experience often is right because we learn lessons, right, when things don't go well. But sometimes those lessons constrain us, and they make us vulnerable to perhaps taking on opportunity. And that's where data comes in, because what it does is it gives you decision points, right? You're still making those decisions based on gut, but you've got some evidence, and that's the really important thing, I think, in what data provides. It's like evidential, either temporal, what's happened in the past, or it's about using that data to perhaps try and make some predictions about what may happen, and then taking the best course of action that matches those.
I remember, like when I started back in 2011 in Singapore, we had a situation which is the opposite from now. We didn't have enough data.
Yeah.
Now you're being bombarded by data. So with the flood of information, how do you, as the CEO of Sila, like decide and filter what really matters versus the noise?
That's an incredibly good question, because I think there's always a push as well for more data. People often think that more data equals better decisions, but that's, I think, not true. It's the quality, right? And and I think anybody who's used things like social listening and things like that before, for example, know that there's a lot of noise to get to the insight, and to do that you have to do a lot of hard work. Well, historically you've had to do a lot of hard work with constructing queries and things like that, and I think it's very similar, whether that's in business or whether that's in life even, right? You've got to sort of try and filter out that signal from the noise, and that comes from experience. But that also is an incredibly difficult thing when you've got an onslaught of information coming at you in multitude of ways. And I think, while AI is helping us cut through that noise, it's still you've still got to do some of that work to understand that. And so data quality is probably the most important thing, whether that's what we're processing or the information I'm using.
And I guess that has impacted the features you've developed in Sila Insight as well, to remove the noise and focus on what really matters.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big breakthrough, I guess, in technology over the last couple of years in compute power and things like that, is allowing things like semantic search and understanding what people, not just what, say, for instance, if you're looking at social data or something like that, it's not just what people are saying, it's what they mean, looking at the context of all of that. And then querying that data, just using natural language instead of constructing like SQL queries or Boolean queries and things like that. You don't need to do any of that anymore. And so I think, that's really sort of been a driver of what we've done, and also making sure that works.
Do you think that writing query is more now like searching Google.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's completely so. So yeah, I mean that, and that's what we've sort of built out is that ability. You don't have to do the, or and or bracket, close bracket, open bracket. Everything
Do
that
you know the biggest query I have written? How long was it?
oh, I could imagine it was
Yes.
long.
Take a number.
100
How many
words.
characters?
Oh, characters. 200.
13,000.
13,000. That was way off.
That was a massive one. Like we've kept that in the archive. Like we've had it in
Yeah.
document and saved it and everywhere because like it was a massive one. And
Yeah.
we've done this for one of the governmental agencies, and it was huge, and
Yeah.
maybe around 5,000 characters were only for spam words.
I was about to say, yeah,
Yeah,
but especially if you've got like a company, right, that has a common word as its name, then yeah, you've got a lot of
that's
work to
that's
do.
why we want more the semantic search.
Yeah, well, that's what vector databases have allowed us to do is to store information differently as maths, and then use the query as maths to try and find the nearest neighbor. So trying to sort of cluster all this information in a search. And what used to take us, I'm sure with 13,000, it would have taken you a long time, but I was going to say hours, is now, 30 seconds. You can just say, show me all the
So,
information
so
about
to
coffee.
to to make sure you avoid the flood of information, are you saying that you're depending on AI, and what else? What is the thing I'm asking for myself? What is the thing that I should be aware of if I'm approaching something that seems to have loads and loads of noise?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, it depends on what the type of data is. So, I mean, if you're talking about social data and say, for instance, media data and all that sort of thing. Firstly, there's probably three main things. The fact that now we're sort of in this visual, obviously we have been for a while, a visual world. So whatever we're doing needs to be multimodal in the sense of not just text, but also understanding imagery and context, and using those kind of tools because what that helps is an immense help in filtering, believe it or not. So by creating a bit more data, you actually are able to get domain specific. So you can sort of train models and things like that to extract. If you're working on a food thing and looking for certain types of ingredients or things like that, then it's not something that not a lot of people would talk about, or a brand name to do with that sort of that kind of area. So using imagery helps immensely, sort of actually filter the noise. So by creating a bit more data, by having those images processed, you get faster insight. So multimodality, and also voice, right? We were having a
Yeah.
chat before about the importance of translating things and things like that as well. And voice is becoming incredibly important, and being able to search that now is also just as easy to get, I guess. And then that didn't really answer the question, I don't think. But the other thing is really knowing your objectives. And so once you've got that data pool, and that you
Going
may have
back one
explained,
step.
yeah, is your objective, right? Is okay. Well, am I trying to find an insight? In which case, that's when you really want to get into the weeds, so to speak. Really get deep into the data, really understand, because it could just be one or two things that emerge that actually give you an insight that can change a strategy, that can change a business, that can change your understanding. If you're doing tracking and things like that, then the objective is obviously looking at volume, but quality volume, right? So you don't want all of the spam and all that sort of thing, and that's where vision can help as well, all those sorts of tools, because you can weed out where people are dropping words into text and things like that. So understanding those objectives before you begin is, I guess, really important, and then making sure you've got the right levers. So I said before, they're sort of multimodal, sort of being able to look at different types of media, whether that's written and text and those types of things, and then it's having a toolkit, and that might be one that you build yourself, or it might be, a commercial one, but that can help you get through that information. And be wary, obviously, about LLMs and AI and all that sort of thing, because a lot of them get it
So
wrong.
what you're saying is we have to do the work to remove the noise. Do the work first before getting the data. Make sure you have the right questions. Make sure you've built the right, if you're using social listening query, right channels. Make sure you've put the right thing into the tool first. And then by asking these questions and asking everything, understand the tools they're using. Because like, I remember someone said, like, the tool, your data is as good as your tool assumption.
Yes.
So you have to understand what tool are you using, what are the capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. And depending on what tool that is, it comes with its own biases, so you've got some tools are much better at certain things than others, right?
As if it's not enough that we're biased. The tools are biased as well.
And then you've got the AI on top of it that's even more biased, right? So you've got all of those things to be wary of. But I think if you've got a clear objective, that it's about setting that understanding. Okay,
so
trying things out.
We have human bias, we have the model, the AI bias, we have the tool bias. Is it safe to say that there is no truth in the digital insights, or the insight that I'm getting is one part of the truth that I need to complete with something else?
I think the latter part of that is probably the best way. Is how certainly I think about it, and we think about it. Is that firstly being led by the data. So a way to eliminate a lot of biases, if you've got sort of if you obviously gone through the objective, you've then chosen a tool or something like that to use that gets the right information that you're interested in. It's then about letting the data guide you. And this is where the quality now, because constructing a query, for example, a Boolean query or things like that, has your author bias, right? Because you're deciding the words to choose to find that information. But there can be stuff that happens outside of that is actually more interesting, or could be just as interesting. And this is where being led by the data and using a tool that uses data categorization, for example, so it's starting to find clusters of information that's similar to each other, that can be really useful, because what that does is eliminates that author bias. The data is revealing itself to you effectively. The other thing to do to help remove bias in that type of thing is also making sure that whatever models and things that you use, that there's sort of, if you're using an LLM or something like that, that you're using one of the ones that allows you to set parameters on how it gets used. And so you set it up, within a specific data set, what's called RAG, so retrieval augmentation generation. What that means is it's just reading from a specific data set, and what that means is that you take away that bias that LLMs have, which is reinforcement. So I tell it something and it's trying to predict what I want to hear. So those things help, but then once you've got that insight, testing it with people then makes that part more effective, right? So if you're going to go and do a survey, you're going to go to an old school focus group, the data sort of gives you the guide of what to ask and how to guide that conversation, so that you can eliminate what you're talking to people in terms of
focus
the
what really matters.
Yeah, and people have this say-do gap, right, where they'll say one thing but they actually do another thing, and that's not conscious. It's one of these unconscious things. So all of that really helps, I think, frame a picture, depending on the research project, of course. If this is a big sort of consumer thing, you definitely want to test it with people, but the data helps filter all of that, so you're not going in blind into a research.
Paul, I don't want to corner you in the area that I'm really keen on, that I can talk on forever, because I understand that you come from a huge background in AI. Like, you're talking about the intersection between urban planning, AI, consumer behavior. So that's one thing I want to stop for a minute at. Like, can you tell me about the journey? How did you come to this intersection, like urban planning in Sila cities and Sila insights and consumer behavior? What happened?
Yeah, good question. Again, so I guess wind back to the 90s, and I was part of the early wave, I guess, of the internet, doing a lot of programming in the early 90s when I was a kid still. Lucky enough to have access to a computer quite early on, and writing things in BASIC and stuff like that, where you make one error in one line, you have to start again. There was no saving or any of that type of thing. That started an early passion. So coding websites, that type of thing. Somewhere around the early 2000s or very late 90s or whenever it was, when it was time to go to university, it was a choice. And back then, it was computer science wasn't necessarily a big choice to make. It was there, but I chose to do urban planning for whatever reason, and started doing that. And then around 2005 or six, I moved to the Middle East and was working on large-scale city projects. And what about becoming a urban planner? You're very much taught about the context of society and social, I guess, cohesion, how cities work socially in terms of how people live and make certain choices that they make and those types of things. So that led to the mid 2000s. I got sort of disillusioned with that work, and went back to computers and started doing a lot of strategy work for brands, but helping them understand people a lot better. What happened then was we were using a lot of social listening tools around, it was 2017, 18, and those tools were, as we probably know around that time, were bad at Arabic understanding, and the insights weren't very good. So we thought, well, what do we do? Let's develop our own natural language processing tools, and so we did that. And sort of 2020 pandemic, as everyone knows probably, that accelerated sort of the people we were working with asking, well, can you use some of these models you've been building to help understand what's happening out there? And we could, and that worked well. And so what we did was launch Sila. And then it was around that same time I started to notice, the planner in me started to notice patterns to do with geography in those insights. So spatial patterns, how things were happening across where people were living and working. And suddenly we sort of began to understand how satisfied people were with their access to education or health or anything like that, and what the friction points in their daily life were, and the good parts as well. And so what we had was these models that were doing well in informing consumer insights, but then mixing it with spatial insights helps understand how these patterns of behaviour across a city and across how people sort of live their daily life, as I mentioned, and what that helps is to create more inclusive and cities that are sort of better positioned for the people that live in them, rather than the people who design them.
Amazing idea. Amazing.
Yeah,
idea.
and so and then the two sort of go side by side, just because different audiences for those two things. So yeah.
That's I love it, and like when you mention it, because I've seen Sila, I've seen the UI, I've seen the UX, the amount of information you can share, it's a remarkable. And so when we're talking about cities and insights,
yep,
from your point of view, what is the lesson that changed the way you think about leadership in the MENA region? I'm highly interested in MENA region because, this the core thing we're interested in, the opportunities we can create for others and the ones that you have created. What is the thing that you truly feel the MENA region had impacted in leadership?
That's a very good question. I think there's probably two things. I think the main core of this, I'll probably talk to the willingness of being open to new things and creating, and the leadership that gets generated from that. Because we would never have had the chance to then give the insights about how people live their daily life and the friction that they have. And for instance, the challenges they have just getting from their home to their work and that type of thing. And the leadership sort of all around the place, sort of understanding how that all works, has opened up the doors for them to create places that are more, like I said earlier, inclusive and built for humans. And what that does is give everybody else improves access to opportunity. And that's the key thing about where people live and cities and urban environments, is that they should give people access to opportunity. And opportunity can be a lot of different things. It's education, it's health, it's exercise, it's jobs, those types of things. And so I think being open to understanding more than anywhere else probably in the world, being open to try technology and new things to help make these places better has been something that I've taken away immensely. And I think that openness really drives, I think, a culture of leadership as well, which is very different. And then I guess from a personal perspective, I think it's quite similar, but I think the attitude of being sort of, we can do anything if we put our minds to it, and that type of thing has been something that's been instilled in me over the years. And I don't think I would be probably the way that I am if I was anywhere else. Actually, if I was back in my home country in Australia or something like that, I'm sure it'd be quite different. And I think that both of those things are incredibly important, because what it means is that for the large amount of young people that are in the MENA region, the leadership is looking towards that next generation and creating as much opportunity as possible.
Indeed.
I think everybody's in different ways is seeing that in different places across the region.
So everyone, when we look at Paul right now, like, and when we look at Sila, we look what you're doing, the amount of success. God bless. Like, I understand how difficult the trip was. So I'm really asking here for your advice and your. I don't want to say the worst memory, but I want to know a point in the journey where you felt like it couldn't go worse than this. And because, like, what we share right now with everyone, anyone who may be in this phase right now, will things get better? How did you go past it? What happened? Can you share with us this with us?
Yeah, of course. I think, and I'm not sure that it just changes. I don't think it ever.
If at any point, like, you felt my questions is like out of the line, just show me the signal. I will change.
No. I think it's incredibly important to talk about that stuff, because I think a lot of people don't sort of realize how difficult it can be to be any kind of entrepreneur, whether you're just making something a maker, or you're sort of going into enterprise. I think it's tough, and if you don't have the right people around you, it can be very lonely. It can be very hard to sort of be able to. You get decision fatigue because you have to make so many decisions every day that have a big impact. And so I think I can't think of one specific, but I don't know that it ever goes away, because the problems either get bigger because they change, right? As the company gets bigger, there's more happening, even though you've got more people around you and those types of things. It's still it's very much sort of that situation where it's your name on the door kind of thing. So you feel sort of personally responsible or invested in that. I think there's been lots of things. Like, I think I can think of times when something hasn't gone right, and maybe a client walks or something like that, and it feels like that's the end of the world, because what have I done wrong, or what have we done wrong, and it was just factors outside of control, and that happens to everyone. But when it does happen, sometimes it feels crushing, I think, and that can be really difficult to see through. But there's nothing surer than the sun rises the next day, and you know, if anything's ever overwhelming, I think for me, sometimes it's just good to get away from it. Just shut the laptop, walk outside, you know, go for a walk for an hour, go and see a movie, do something to just try and clear your mind, because I think what happens in all of that stuff is...
Does it help, Paul? Does it help? Like if I feel I'm bombarded and overwhelmed and swamped in problems, does it help to take a break?
Yes, you have to, because it's counterintuitive, right? So if you've got an inbox that's suddenly ding, 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 and then you've got the WhatsApp going off, and you've got, like, you know, people ringing your phone, and, you know, there's all sorts of crises. You have to take a step back to sort of be able to prioritize, because the more and more you get deeper into something, the chances are that you'll just keep digging and digging and digging, you know, and it won't sort of, you won't get out of, you won't be able to see what's important. And that's a really, really important part during any, I think, crisis. It's like, what's really important? What can I put to one side for a couple of days to focus on this one really important thing? Or if they're all important, I just need to get away from them, because that clarity, by just going for a walk, or just, you know, seeing something different, sitting by the river, or you know, just even having a sandwich or some lunch somewhere outside of your desk and not look at your phone, those types of things, it just helps you prioritize and take a minute to take a deep breath and that type of thing. I think that's a very underrated thing, and sometimes it's just those really simple things that give you that kind of clarity. And talking to people, right? So it's not always your own thing. If you're a solo founder, for example, it can be really, really, really tough. But, you know, if you don't have a support network at home or something like that, then, you know, it's really important very early on to have somebody that you can also just talk to about
or
stuff,
even a network, like a community or a community founders, new startups, like to talk about the problems together.
Yeah, because and you know, like
a group of people like crying on the river, like.
Yeah. But it helps. I was at an event or whatever it was, or it would have been about 6 months ago, and people were doing that. They were talking about some of the problems and challenges they were having. Probably not problems, but it happened to me before. You know, it's just like, it's the same. Everybody thinks, and you do. It's natural. You think it's just you. You think it's just, you know, like it's just me going through this. But actually, everybody has, you know, delayed contracts or whatever, you know, or maybe there's something to do with admin or payments or whatever it is. All the normal things, they're actually quite normal, and they seem like they're not unless you talk to people. And I think going to those kinds of events, networking, just having a coffee morning, or joining a group like yours,
it builds a mental resilience, an enormous one. Like
and just
normal situations in life like wouldn't impact us anymore, like, because like we've seen worse.
Yeah, exactly. And talking to people that have done it, you know, before, and they'll, you know, there's crazy stories, you know, and like, it just, I think it helps, because it's like, oh, right. And then you can just talk to that person. Well, what did you do? And maybe their situation is actually really different, but just hearing that can be like, actually, I think that's given me a good idea. So yeah, I think that helps a lot. And you just be surprised how common, the challenges are. So, you know, like,
all right, with all these problems and the struggles you've been through, like, if you're gonna take this minute to thank someone, like a mentor or someone who has influenced you in the past years, whom would you like to thank?
I think there's quite a few there. I think I'd probably primarily
because like we can clip this and so you can send it to them.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, yeah. Well, firstly, I better say my wife, because that's an important
smart answer. That's a smart answer.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing sometimes, right? Is having something or someone at home and the kids and stuff. Professionally, I think on the planning side, there's a incredibly intelligent guy based in Italy called Mark Stringer, and he's a world-renowned urban planner, and has helped considerably. Just helping, I guess, not plot the course, but like, this is what people are doing. This is where these insights are really important for this process, and then sort of being a champion for us on certain occasions has been really important, because when you have sort of somebody who is renowned in that specific world, it sort of makes a big difference. So I think, so he's been very helpful. I think as well, there's numerous people on the business side of things where just having a coffee even twice a year has opened up a number of thought patterns and connections. And one guy in Dubai, Tarek Fadlallah, from Nomura, has been incredibly important there. There's so many. I think there's probably not just one. I try and, but what I do is I try and actually have a coffee, meet with a lot of different people, because I really value experience, but also I know that they're busy people and things like that. So
and that's why, Paul, I appreciate your time, because like what you're doing right now, you're giving back.
Oh, so, well, it's my pleasure.
So that's why I'm truly thankful, because like the same thing I'm sure they've shared with you knowledge, information, and you're doing the same as well, and that's really nice of you. Thank you.
What's important, right? Like every there's a saying, right, that a tide lifts all boats, and that's I think very important, because I think when like I said earlier, sharing experiences and information, suddenly it gives somebody an idea, it gives somebody a spark, it maybe helps them, and that's important, because that's what's happened to me before.
And so I've talked with you about the research and data. What is it? What does it mean to you? I've talked about your background. The third section on my list is Paul as the CEO, as someone who leading other. So now I want your advice for myself. So I used to manage like loads of people. Like at one time, I've managed 40 to 50 people. Yeah. And right now we have, I think, 30% of our listeners to the Arab Media Intelligence Network are senior. We have around 15% manager position. How do you, as the CEO, how do you make sure that the people working with you, they're not executors? They think critically, creatively, and what happens do you practice with them to make sure they are involved?
Yeah, I think so. I tend to be very decentralized in my approach. So I know this doesn't necessarily follow a lot of books and things like that written about being a leader and everything like that. But I prefer to empower people to make decisions by setting parameters, obviously, but also sort of delegation. So, really so that I can spend more time setting strategy and moving through, rather than the sort of day-to-day operations and things like that. How does that happen?
What do you mean? What do you mean by setting parameters?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. So depending on the role. So let's just make one up. Like somebody leading a business unit. It would be, okay, so what are we going to do? What are the priorities for this year at the start of the year, or before the start of the year? What's our target going to be? Collaboratively work on that. Collaboratively work on, how that's going to be executed in a very high level and simple way, because plans change. Anything can happen. The economy can change. There may be technology, as we know now, is changing every day almost.
The only constant factor is the change.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but at least having some, what I like to call guardrails between, where things can go off road and where things should stay on the road, and where we should be following, and the North Star, so to speak. And then within that, it's up to them to execute that once we've agreed on that. And then we check in, regularly, but not overly, because I think it's better to be, I think, to give that person time and space to execute that plan and execute it right within the parameters, and then obviously make resources available to help that, whether they're But
And that goes well with
personnel,
tolerating the mistakes. Like if when you set parameters and you expect them to execute, you have a set of like range of mistakes that might happen. But that's
yeah.
why you have parameters, like to control the amount of mistakes that will
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it's not a terminal mistake, but also that being said, I think if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not doing stuff,
Yeah,
and you know what I mean.
we have
Uh,
this comedy show, like and the comedy show they mentioned work a lot, do a lot of mistakes, you might get fired. Don't work at all, you wouldn't
yeah,
do any
yeah,
mistakes, you stay a job.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
one of the comedy shows we have.
Yeah, well, that's I think I prefer some mistakes because it means things are being tried and we're trying things and stuff doesn't work. Like it just things might go wrong. That's okay, depending on again the scale. And if it's if it's something that keeps happening, then there's a problem. Is that problem sitting with my direction as a leader? Is it the person executing it, or is it something in between? And that's when you've got to sort things out. If the same thing keeps happening, say more than twice, then you've got to sort of look at why that's happening, the root cause of that. But more importantly, I think allowing that degree of failure, and not just but doing it fast and moving on. So does this work? No. Okay. Is there a reason why it didn't work? Well, we're not sure. It didn't work well. There's not a reason. But if it was because, I don't know, there was that something wasn't good enough, or there was the wrong marketing, or whatever it was, then it's like, okay, so there was a good reaction, but it didn't go the way we
So
thought. Can we learn from that and
the
try
secret
again?
sauce, I would say the secret sauce or the secret recipe, what the one you mentioned, being transparent from start, from the early beginning, and making sure you agree with your teams on your expectations and what you're expecting from them, and setting the parameters, and that will include everything.
Yeah, and I think yes, yeah, and also just making sure that if you don't agree, there's that's been talked about. It doesn't sort of go quiet. It's like, well, I'm not sure that this is the right direction. These are the reasons why I don't think that, and then hopefully that person can come back and say, well, actually, no, I think it's right because of these things, and that changes my mind. Or otherwise, we agree. Okay, we need to go off and work on this.
But
So yeah, I think that's critical because otherwise you don't have that empowerment.
that's a new one. Like I love the idea. So you work with multidisciplinary teams. Like I know you work with data science people, urban planners, strategists. Do
Yeah.
you work with creative people? You work with technical people and operational. How do you manage switching all these hats and talking with everyone with their own language?
Yeah, well, I think it's a challenge, and that's where you rely on having the right team members who are, if there is a good great operations sort of layer, but also I think deeply understanding your business and what makes it tick enables that to happen. So you don't necessarily need to get too involved in certain things because you know that those people and the person running that is capable. They know what they're doing. They're the domain expertise. They've got that expertise. You've brought them on to do that job, so trust in them. But yeah, it's a challenge sometimes, particularly if you're going deeply technical or you're going deeply into that sort of stuff where you've got a limit. It's sort of more than about okay, so how do we fix this, or how do we change this, or how do we capitalize on that opportunity and have that conversation? But yeah, it's really challenging, especially
Paul,
if you're going from databases to marketing.
if you see me like sitting like this, you have to know that I'm coming up with a question that really bothered me. So I'm getting ready for the question,
Yeah.
and it's an opportunity like to have you to answer this question. I want to understand your POV on this one.
Mm.
Do you think, now you mentioned they are the expertise in the areas, and like of course, like when you're talking, as you mentioned, marketing, strategy, data science, engineering manager, you have different teams. Do you believe in that we should be all having the same way of thinking under this umbrella? Or do you believe like, no, we can have different ways of thinking, we don't need to have the same personality, we can have multiple people coming with different ideas, so we don't have to agree on the way we think? Which one do you think is the right approach for the company?
Uh, yeah, really depends on the company. I think the latter is having different personalities is really important, because what that does is it helps eliminate, for instance, some of my own biases, because if you have everybody sort of saying the same thing, then you get deeper into doing things potentially not the right way or the way that it should be happening. You miss opportunities. I think when there's different people, different voices, but I think everybody has to have the same sort of North Star, though. That's one thing, is that we.
I love what you mentioned now. North Star. What is your North Star?
Well, our main one is basically well, we've got two, because the cities and insights kind of are slightly different. But for the city stuff, it's about making a difference to people's lives through our technology, and empowering decisions that are happening on how things work in cities, and how they're put together to really make a difference to people's life in a tangible way. And so what that means is that our technology should always be furthering that. Our insights should always be furthering that. And then on the insights, it's very, very similar. It's just helping, making sure that we're helping research and insights professionals and marketing professionals get to the answers faster. Yeah, and make their life easier, and also make their consumers make products that are more responsive.
You wouldn't have to write a 13,000 character query.
Yeah. That's
part of it.
Yeah, to stop that kind of thing. Well, yeah, if you've got one of those, if you have a North Star like that, right? Like, firstly, you have to make the tech accessible. You have to make it easy. You have to make it so that decision makers actually want to use it, as well as junior people. And you have to remove friction from those people's jobs. And to do that, you have to have great tech, and you also have to produce quality insights. And so I think, if you have that kind of sort of lofty vision or aim or whatever you want to call that, mission, it cascades down, right? So then somebody knows they've got to make the tech great. Someone knows they've got to make a great marketing campaign. Someone knows that they've got to execute on a plan. So it helps, but then you have diverse voices, and not everyone saying the same thing. And I think that's really important, because if everybody has the same opinion, that's, I think, a recipe for problems a lot of the time.
That's lovely. And I'm gonna, because like I see we've been in like 45 minutes, and I still have loads of questions. So
okay.
I'm just gonna go for one thing that is really important to me, and I want to understand your point of view on this one as well. From your perspective, do you think the urban planning and consumer industry, consumer insights industries, is it mature enough in the MENA region, or is it expanding? Is it booming? Like do I think, like, are you coming to Egypt maybe? Like, because in Egypt we have this increase for smart cities in some of the areas that is especially built like to be smart. We have, I think, the first smart city that's been designed in Egypt, but I can't remember the name of the city. So we're seeing the trend. Are we growing? Which part of the cycle, the product cycle, I would say, and are we maturing? Are we growing? Are we declining?
Yeah, definitely growing. So on that side of things, firstly, smart cities enable, and it's a really broad term, but it really enables efficiency in cities, and by efficiency, it's things like controlling traffic lights to improve traffic flows, optimizing the collection of, for instance, of garbage or something like that, or making sure that there's enough water and electricity, and the houses are the right temperature. are efficient as possible in terms of electricity. It's great. But what all those things do, right? All those bits create data, and they create a lot of data, and synthesizing that and really unlocking what that means by connecting it to other data sources is something that's really powerful. And so there's a high level of adoption across MENA. So it's not just in the Gulf, it's not just in Egypt, it's across the Maghreb and across everywhere. It is a willingness to sort of go into this, and what's lagged behind often is the planning of those places, because they're done by people like me, who are trained in a certain way, and you don't necessarily consider all the time how the people who are going to live in those places will actually live. So you can create a smart city, but you also need to understand the people in there, and so that's really important. And there's an embracing of that, I think, by decision makers, not just in government, but also in consulting.
I have this as a quote. Truly, in order to build a smart city, you mentioned you have to understand the people living in it. So it's not, you don't have to understand coding, you don't have to understand programming, you don't have to understand, I don't know, web development. No. The first thing you need to understand is the people living in it, or else it's going to fall, it's going to break down.
Yeah, you could build the smartest city on earth, but if you don't understand who you're A, building it for, and B, the people, or if it's an existing place like Cairo or Dubai or Riyadh, it's how do people behave in it, because human behavior isn't, although we say it is, it's not predictable, and so and it changes really fast. And so there's this concept in particularly in planning, that these cities need a new plan every 5 to 10 years, because they don't change that often, but they're changing every second of every day. And as more people move, more people get on planes and move around, they change, demographics change.
And the way we work, it's not the same as Gen Z, it's not the same as Gen Alpha. They will change.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's something we've looked at, for instance, is the patterns of, the consequences of working from home. What does that mean to a city? Less congestion, but that actually means that, but things change. So for instance, where there's office buildings, then, there might be a coffee shop on the ground floor. That coffee shop is less busy. So they've got less business because people are working from their home, but they're going from their home to buy a coffee, for example. And then so it changes, it redistributes how activity happens, and then that happens by generations. And it's the same in consumer stuff, right? Like as well, I think that's a different type of thing. I think that's, I think you've got on the city side of things, a large embracing of how people live and what we're building for. I think there's a similar thing coming through with insights, but I think the challenge with that particular industry and has been, I guess, the historical part of it. We've done things like this for 60 years. Why should we change? And that type of thing. But like actually, it needs to evolve, and it's an industry where technology can help so much, because it takes away all of these bias and errors and samples and all this stuff. And so indeed. I think the two are really, really interrelated, but it's different. I think that industry is growing, but in a different way.
And I think, to be honest with you, like the webinars, I'm getting the most value out of it. Like I keep asking questions. I keep asking questions that it's truly interesting for me as a manager or someone, I would say, in coming to the area of handling people's and different opinions. And I want to understand from you, Paul, like I remember at one point when we're trying to convince people with the social listening. So I've sat with one of the digital marketing managers of a telecommunication company, and I was trying to tell him like the importance of NLP, social listening, and how quick it is, and you truly can understand the sentiment and the mood of the social media in one click. And his answer was devastating. He told me, but I can hire 5 to 10 people, so they would do the sentiment manually. And I said, like, yeah, you can do this, but that's stupid. That's not intelligent. So they're like, what
Why
the
would
hell are you
you?
talking about? So my question to you, how can we build a strong or a stronger data culture in institutions? And I'm sure you've been through this,
Yeah. It's
where
a
they
familiar
still
story. Yeah.
heavily rely on the tradition, on the intuition.
Yeah, I think so. That almost exact thing. I mean, I've heard that before. I've heard lots of things. The reliability of that sort of data as well. But it's because a lot of those times those people are coming at it from a research hat, and you kind of have to forget how it was done before. This is how we can do it now. We can actually validate these data points by using different ones and all those sorts of things. But I think what has helped immensely, at least in the last couple of years, has been people embracing ChatGPT and those types of things, because what that's opened their eyes to is the way that technology can solve problems, even though it can't solve that problem for them yet. I guess it might in the future, but it makes them more open for technology. So I've seen some, really reluctant clients that are as clients now that they were incredibly reluctant before, and then once ChatGPT came in, it's like, well, actually, there's a point to this technology. I get it now. Let's talk about how we can use that. And I think as people become a bit more literate with this kind of technology and a bit more open to it, then that helps solve those challenges, because for once, there's been a new technology that a lot of people have embraced. I know we talked a lot previously about the metaverse and things like that, but it had a barrier, right? The same as the AR goggles, things like that. There's a barrier to the world, but people see a benefit with this stuff, and that's helped the technology a lot more.
Yeah. So
Um,
when you mentioned AI, AR, and you've mentioned all these technologies and how we are adapting to it, I'll ask you a very important question. Do you think, for me as a startup or a very small business competing with the giants, do I have the capacity to compete with the giants with the AI tools? Do you truly can I truly level the playing field with larger players?
Probably not directly, but indirectly. So, and what I mean by that is, for instance, there's a lot more now ability to get a lot more done. So, particularly around engineering and coding and things like that, those types of assistants really help. So they can improve productivity greatly. What that then means is that you can sort of begin to level a playing field in your niche. If you're trying to go after sort of Microsoft or someone like that, it's hard. You need the capital to do that. But if you're sort of in like the social listening space, and you're sort of or data analysis space, and you're trying to compete against European or American companies, you can, yes, 100%, because it helps. You have to do the work to. Yeah, and it means that you can sort of be in your market a lot more, and sort of reach those people a lot better. And so it's about using that technology in a smart way, So it can really help productivity with coding. It can help with things like mundane tasks
You
and
have to
repetitive
use
tasks.
technology and add your niche into it.
Yeah, well, you have to do that as well. Find a positioning. I do this for this. I do A for X, that kind of thing. And what that helps is then, because that gives you, like you just said, your niche, and that niche can be quite big. There's a big market in a lot of niches. I think the Americans have a saying, don't they? The rich is in the niches. But those areas help you compete as well, because big companies don't typically have a domain expertise. They don't have an expertise in, whether it's providing media intelligence for financial firms, or it's providing, social insights for pharma companies or something like that. A lot of the big players are trying to attract all of those people together, but they have one suite of products that aren't specialized, whereas you can actually now a lot more easily specialize and go into those verticals, and then that's when you can really sort of begin to make an impact a lot faster as well, because you're seen as an expert by the people in that field, and that helps a lot. That helps credibility, and it helps the sales process and all those sorts of things. So I think yes, to a degree. I think in a lot of degrees, you'll still have people that are saying those things. Like, oh, I'll just hire people, or I'll just use ChatGPT, and then let them make that mistake, because we know how that ends, right? We know it doesn't end well usually.
Since we're talking about AI and the future, and like forget about fingerprint, like we have the eye print right now. Like when you enter the city, you have the eye print. And do you think in the coming 5 years, with the AI and everything, I might go to Dubai and then I enter a dome? Like it's not a city anymore, like it's a dome, and it's the air is filtered, and everything runs by the eye print, and I wouldn't breathe air. I would breathe the air condition whenever I move in. And do you see in the coming 5 years? I remember when I was young, like I was reading this story about the city they have built in the desert inside the dome. That's why I've mentioned this. And
right.
I remember the drawing, like when you enter, it opens the dome, and then you enter, like, and everything is filtered, everything runs by. Do you remember the movie for the name of the movie was Judge? It was for Sylvester Stallone, I think.
Oh yeah, Judge Dredd.
You remember, like, you remember the city, like the dome and everything, like. Do you think we're going this far in the coming 5 to 10 years, or that's still too far away? Like, what will happen in the coming 5 years with AI reshaping consumer insights and cities?
Yeah, I think that type of thing is probably still a long way, but it's not inconceivable. So there's already sort of parts of cities, particularly in our region, that are being, for instance, cooled. So, very, very hot climates, like what happens in the Gulf, when you have extreme summers and things like that, there's already starting to be not just air-conditioned walkways that are covered, but actually open air but cooled from the ground up. And so what it does is create a temperature layer, and what that means is that you can walk around comfortably even when it's sort of 40, 45 degrees, that type of thing. Those types of technologies are going to get better. Also, the more and more autonomous vehicles there are will change roads forever, because the thing with as that technology becomes more and more normal, I guess, and more people begin to have autonomous cars, then there'll be less accidents, because you're taking away the human element from that. So and what that'll mean is that the roads don't need to be quite as big, because all the cars know what speed to travel, when they need to stop. There won't be any of those sort of things. So over time, those types of things will change. I think climate is a big one, and that'll change as well a lot. And I think, what does that mean for consumer industry? Well, I think the way we shop will have to also change, and those types of things as well. And so brands are going to find it probably a bit harder to be mentally available for the people that need to buy their stuff, because a lot of that relies on seeing the products on the shelf for you to recall that. If you're doing brand tracking and things like that, a big part of that is product distribution sitting on the shelf. If we're not going, or we don't need to go to the shops anymore because there's AI to just choose things for us and deliver it, then that's going to be a lot harder, right, for us to pick new things, because we're not going to necessarily know to choose the new flavor of soda, or the new I don't know what product that's on the shelf. So yeah, but I think the change will be incremental. It really depends. I think the big challenge at the moment is that I think we're in a little bit of a sort of AI bubble, so to speak, where we're sort of imagining all of these things that can happen, but whether we're able to build enough servers and all those sorts of things, and to be able to keep up with that in an economic way, that's going to be the really interesting part. Because to do those kinds of changes you're talking about, you need really rapid development. And I think even though those companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and all of those are developing stuff at a really fast pace, there'll come a point where you need the servers as well and the processing and all that sort of thing, and that'll create some new
So
problems, I think.
I'll ask you the question like everyone is talking about. Like, do you see an exaggeration when people talk about AI as a real risk, or do you see it as an enabler? Like, which side are you in? The human side or the AI side? Choose wisely, Paul.
Well, I think it's an enabler. I think what it does. I think there are risks, of course, because people who perhaps don't know that it has a bias towards reconfirming what you want to hear, like, because it's predictive text, and so they're getting better at not doing that, but they still do. They say, "Great idea, yes, that works." Everything's yes. That can be dangerous, I think, because sometimes that can reinforce people's beliefs in the wrong way, which might not be good ones. And what I'm talking about here is more social type stuff. I think over time there's a risk, yeah, of course, if this stuff develops in the way that it has over the last 2 years, for example, and that becomes shorter and shorter, and there's going to be problems with AI taking people's jobs, and that's a problem. If it frees us up, which I think I'm more the optimist about this stuff. I think it's an enabler, and it means that the jobs that exist because we've created those jobs to fill a need, that everybody can sort of start to do higher value work and perhaps not have to work those crazy hours and things like that. So I'm an optimist in that it's an enabler. It's going to help us, but I think there are risks, and the more people that know about those risks, the better.
I've read the paper, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was an MIT paper, and they were talking about the amount of documents you need in order to make sure the LLM is corrupted.
Yeah.
And did you come across it? Like,
it's recently. Yeah.
So
it's not many.
I think it was 200.
Yeah, it wasn't very many. Yeah. Out of the
So,
millions,
out of billions of records, you only need 200 to corrupt a point of view. So and what you mentioned right now is critical, like to make sure people understand that AI might get you wrong, like might be biased, and might give you the wrong point of view, because that what where I remember right now when they were talking about the autonomous vehicles, and they mentioned, like, if you are driving and suddenly you found a dog, so you move it out of the way, then you found a baby and an old man, whomever, you will go with the car, but it's an accident. You haven't made a choice. But for autonomous vehicles, the decision was made years and years ago for someone who programmed how it will act. And
exactly.
they were talking about the dilemma of the human conscious in building the LLM. So it's
And I
not
mean,
like it has no conscious. It has someone has written something in it.
yeah, no, that's right, and when people talk about the biases that it has, it's the author, it's the people that have coded and trained, and the training data.
Yeah.
But then also, now that the LLMs, for example, can browse websites, there's a large part of it's not SEO anymore; it's LLM optimization, and also you can put false information in that, so a malicious actor can put buried, in the text, in the code, to execute certain commands or ask. And that's why it's dangerous about using some of the tools that come with LLMs, like Claude and things like that. Sometimes have these plugins that you can connect to your documents and things like that.
Yeah.
There's a risk if it goes to a website and there's an instruction on the website's page to take that information and give it to email it to another actor, then you might lose some of your information. So, it's about being smart about this stuff, a bit like using the internet generally, right? Like, you have, if you see...
In the past week, you've mentioned Claude right now, but in the past week, what tools or AI news or tools that caught your interest?
I tend to look at, I think well, specifically that one, Claude is a good one. I think Anthropic are doing great things, more so maybe than OpenAI in terms of the big ones. But Google stuff is also amazing, particularly the not necessarily the Gemini models, but all the other models. So that we've got some of the best embedding models and things like that on the technical side, where you need to retrieve information from a vector database. They've got some of the best stuff there, and that information and that stuff is exceptional. And I think that's something that's really amazing. But I think every week, or it's not even every week, right? It's every day. Somebody's announcing something that changes things, and it's like, oh, they've done this. This is great. And then 2 days later, it's like they've done something better. And I think that pace of change means
the Chinese monster has come to compete with the OpenAI. Like a few days ago, like the Indian monster has come. I'm like, are you serious?
And everybody's competing with everybody at the moment, right? And that's it's a good thing, but also it means that it's hard to keep up. And I think over time, that'll probably start to stop as people get a bit more used to this as well. It'll have to.
I didn't get the full list, but there's one thing about me, you have, Paul. I'm an annoying person, so I'll keep annoying you for the list. So we hope that we can get access to what is Paul doing, like what is the list that Paul is using for as a CEO of 2 major companies in AI. So I will keep buzzing you until you give me the full list. I hope you can get annoyed.
I will.
Perfect.
I'm a heavy user of Claude, though. I think that's
perfect. Yeah. So we have Claude, we have Gemini. I'll keep coming back to you until I get the full list.
Yeah, you get the full list.
So we're going for, we've been over an hour. Like I'm going for a quick fire, a snapshot round. I'm gonna ask you a quick round questions, and I'm really interested to know your way of thinking without going deeply into the answer. Just want to know the first thing that snaps into your mind. So if I want to work with you, what are you looking for? Like, what do you look for right now? If I'm living in Dubai right now, if I'm in AI, if I want to do something with you, if I want to work with you, what you're looking for, the role, the mindset, what are the things you're looking for right now?
I think in anybody, wherever they are, it doesn't have to be here. We have a dispersed workforce. So I think it's resilience. So sort of being able to be resilient in the face of changing priorities, changing things, being able to cope with change, because we've just been talking about it. The technology is changing at such a rapid pace that everything has to be quite nimble now, and move fast. So I think resilience is really key, and also part of that is resourcefulness. So being able to sort of see those changes and being able to be resourceful in the sense of finding solutions, finding answers, and those types of things. I think they're the 2 key traits that we look for. And then beneath that, it's obviously the technical kind of stuff, or if it's a technical role or if it's a different type of role. But the overall thing is that sort of seeing or talking to somebody who can demonstrate, that they're able to change and they're able to adapt, and that doesn't cause big problems. So that's the key one.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. And if you weren't in the AI industry, cities or consumer insights, what field could you see yourself in?
Don't know. I don't know. Maybe far away from that stuff. I think I'd be as far away from technology as possible. A farmer.
That's the computer science dream. Like everyone in computer science want to be a farmer.
I think that feels natural.
So would you rather like design the city of the future or predict the consumer of the future? If you're gonna go with one, which one would you think?
I'm going to diplomatically answer this one because I think they're both interrelated. So the consumers live mostly in the cities, and the way that they behave, one influences the other.
It matches what you mentioned. Like if you understand the consumer, you can design the city for
Yeah,
them.
and the reverse. So if you've got a great city, then you're going to be able to predict, what the consumer behavior is going to be. So you're going to be able to understand where you put outlets, where you put, how
I
you
told you
market them.
we have the quote for this webinar. If you want to build better cities, you need to understand first the people living in it.
Yeah, I think that would be, I'd say both of those things are intertwined. And so that's what's good about this stuff.
So, what is one thing that people often get wrong about your role and company?
Uh, I think role. I think people often think that it's sort of, all one person and that type of thing. And there's this. And I'm talking about the title generally, not necessarily me, but I think, that there's a lot of different people that go into this process, and I think that's often misunderstood. About the company, I think it's sometimes people get confused with our name and other companies that have similar names, but also I think it's also that I don't think there's that much confusion around that. Actually, I think it's mostly around
You've made
what
everything clear for them.
yeah, yeah, to a degree now, more than ever, but that continually evolves.
Before that wasn't the case.
No, because I think it was a little confusing, but yeah, I think now we're sort
With
of
the
close
AI and everything.
yeah, and how it changes, and also you tend to move so fast when you're a small company
indeed,
that
indeed.
you can sometimes forget that you might be confusing people because you
how,
just
how,
tend
lo-
to have it's
how long you been in the MENA region?
21 years now.
21 years. That's
Yeah.
more than like people living and born in
Yeah.
the MENA region.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
if
it's
you
been a
if
while.
you're describing, because I have a couple of my viewers from UK and I have also viewers from UAE, and I remember I was in this discussion with a friend of mine, and he is saying like, yeah, I understand the hype about the KSA and UAE, and if you have something to share, like what can you share about the future of AI and growth in the MENA region?
Well, I think the future of AI in this region is enormous because, particularly, I guess in the Gulf countries, but also I think the others are sort of also by association understanding it now. But the infrastructure that's being built in this region for the region, not just for the countries that are building it, is immense because the biggest thing with AI, not the biggest, but one key thing is latency. So the amount of time that it takes a query to reach the server and then the server do the inference and then give you the result back. Very soon there'll be exceptionally large data centers in this part of the world, not just in the UAE, but in Saudi, in Qatar, and I believe as well there's some large infrastructure being built in Egypt as well. That will give a competitive advantage to a lot of the rest of the world because nowhere else is building at that scale. And what that means is that if you're within this region, even if you're not in a country that has those data centers, you're going to be close to the data centers. So stuff's going to be faster and it's going to enable a lot more to be built. So I think that's the most exciting thing. And I think the adoption is by that way, and the different leadership's belief in that technology has really propelled the adoption of the tech as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
So
very exciting.
hopefully, like they listen to your side as someone who's been for 21 years now, and we have a question from one of the audience, and he's mentioning like he's asking about how to move from the amateur level to professional level, and is it enough to focus on courses, and is it enough just to focus on learning and studying to move from one level to another?
Yeah, I think, learn. I mean, the day you stop learning is the day you die, I think. So I think learning is such a critical part, and being open to learn new things is really, really important. Now, whether that's structured or self-led also depends a lot on your own self and personality. So I think that's a key thing. If you're the type of person that likes to get under the hood of things and understand things yourself and understand how stuff works, then the tools that we now have at our disposal to do self-learning is incredible. Just unimaginable 5 years ago, I think. Being able to understand how tech works and things like that is just immense. That being said, I think there'll always be a place for structured learning. I think the foundational stuff that goes into, for example, technology, if you really want to understand that, then you really need to understand, for example, like coding. Sometimes to understand coding, you need to understand maths, and to do all that sort of stuff it's better in a structured environment. I think to keep up, it's about choosing what you keep up with as well, because like there is just so much information on a daily basis at the moment that I think it's very overwhelming, and a lot of it's useless. A lot of the updates and things like that are announced, they get pushed, and if we think back to the release of GPT-5, in the first few days, the performance of that model was not very good, and it takes, you need to sort of wait for things, and I think at the moment we're in a sort of bit of a hype cycle, so trying to keep up maybe is not the best way. It's maybe just trying new things every once in a while, but if you find something that's working for you, a tool or a method or whatever, then stick to that, and then just try certain new things along the way. But yeah, I think structured learning, it really depends on you. If you're open to looking at things yourself, then unstructured self-learning is great, and it's amazing that we can now create. You can even instruct LLMs to create self-learning courses for you to then follow those courses.
Indeed.
So I think that's the beauty of it. But there'll always be a place for structured formal learning.
Paul, I always say at the end of my webinar that the most expensive and important thing that you can get out of a mentor is not money, it's time.
Yes.
You've given us an hour and 20 minutes of your time.
That's a pleasure.
And for that, Paul, we will always be thankful for everything you've shared with us. So for everyone watching us, and everyone will watch the record, Paul journey highlight how data and AI and research, it's the true example of the impact you can do, not only for companies, but for cities, and to change people's lives, reshaping the way everything is built, managing cities, redefining truly the business, understanding the consumer behavior. I know Paul, not from the LinkedIn. I know Paul personally, and his communication style. He's one of the modest and one of the leadership style is centered on innovation, technology, sustainable solutions. And even when we talked about Sila Insights, he mentioned like the North Star is how we're going to impact people's lives. It's not how we're going to earn money. It's not how they are going to use the tools, how we're going to impact the lives. I love this about them. And this shows you why are we doing what we're doing right now with AMIN, Arab Media Intelligence webinar, is trying to find people and put the spotlight on them and thanking them for their time and what they're doing. So everyone who's aiming to have their own startups or aiming to build things, they know that there is an opportunity for you to have these kind of morals and still want to be one of the most successful people around. So thank you, Paul, and we wish to see Sila Insights and Sila cities continue to shape the future in the MENA region. It's up to you. Like like a minute or two. Do you want to say something to the viewers?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for those kind words, Mohammed. And I think what I want to say back is that I think what you do is fantastic and so important. Firstly, from an education point of view, the newsletters, the posts, your posts on LinkedIn are always great, and I think they offer a great depth, and it's something that I think a lot of people clearly engage with, and I think it's something that's missing. And you're a great voice, I think, for not just media intelligence, but general sort of data intelligence and understanding in the region. So I really commend you on that. And this is a great initiative. Super happy to be proud of, super
My,
proud
my heart
to be
is
part of
pounding.
it.
Like my heart is pounding, bro, out of my chest.
No, I think all the viewers and all the people in your network would wholeheartedly agree with me there. I think as a parting words, I think firstly, if there's people out there that are thinking about doing things themselves and getting into business themselves, I know I'm just going to try and touch on a few of the things we talked about. I think I just, try it, try something, get stuck into it, really sort of understand firstly what you're going to do, think of your objectives, and then give something a go. You never know, you've got to try stuff, or otherwise it passes you by. I think then more generally, I think embrace technology. I see a world where we're starting to do that at a rate we've never sort of seen before. Filtering that technology becomes a challenge, filtering data, but it's not just our tools, it's lots of tools out there that can really help with that. I think keeping up to speed with those is really important, and you do that through these types of webinars, right? Like watching this type of stuff, hearing new perspectives, hearing different thoughts. And so really enjoyed the chat tonight, and thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. And for everyone, it was Mohammed Sharif and Paul Cully. Thank you, and I hope we haven't made you stay for too long. I understand it's almost midnight at you. So thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm just going to end the stream.